Hello and welcome. This video is about note-taking. Note-taking in lectures and note-taking from readings. My name is Kitty Malone, and the other person you can see on the screen is Deborah Woolley. And we are specialist study skills tutors at Cambridge, and we've been doing our jobs for quite a number of years. How long have you been at Cambridge, Deborah?
I think I've been at Cambridge for years, 10, 11 years now.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah, and I've been there about 14 years. So we've racked up quite a few years together. And we work on a one-to-one basis with our students as and when they want to book in. And you will be able to work with us too, if you would like to. So today, we're going to walk you through some techniques, tips, strategies that you might be interested to try when you're taking notes in lectures and when you're taking notes from your readings. We're not going to go into a great deal of depth. We don't have the time today, but you can always book in to speak to us or one of the other tutors if you would like to discuss any of these techniques in more detail. So the keywords you're going to hear us use today are systematic. Be systematic, basically. Have a plan, work it out. How are you going to do it? Be consistent with it. Be organized, because then your notes will be navigable. And those last two keywords, active and multisensory, keeping the way you approach any area of your study active, really helps with focus because it ups your level of engagement. And the common denominator for keeping things active is to take a multi-sensory approach. Speak aloud, hear things read aloud, map things out in linear, non-linear ways, use text, draw, a variety of ways to keep you very, very engaged and active. And that really impacts on the really maintaining interest in what you're doing. Okay, so first up, why bother taking notes? If you want to work in a bit more of an interactive way with this video, you can pause it here and jot some ideas down for yourself. Now, when I ask this question with my students in one-to-one sessions, they come up with a variety of answers. But generally, these are the most common answers. So why take notes in a lecture? Well, to help process the information. Lots of students find that if they're writing or typing or mapping as part of the listening process, it just helps them capture that information and it reinforces it for them. To learn, obviously. To understand, to add to existing knowledge, to clarify, to remember. That is a big one for pretty much all the students I work with, most of whom have some concerns about the efficiency of their memory, their short-term memory, when they're listening to a lot of information. Anything you'd add to that, Deborah?
No, I think you've covered it absolutely perfect.
Yeah, so why take notes from readings? Many of the same answers as for lectures, but often when you're doing extra reading, it's to get more information because you've got to write an essay, a dissertation, a report. Maybe you've got to design an experiment or a project. Or the last point there might be that you're deepening or expanding your knowledge for revision purposes. So we're going to talk about lecture notes first. So think of note-taking as a sandwich, if you like, for the lecture experience, because what you do before can be just as important as what you do during it. And then what you do after can be really key as well. So there's three parts really to note-taking in lectures. that we'd like you to consider. So, before, the main headline of this slide, get curious. Do anything you can with any time that you have to engage your curiosity in this lecture. What's it about? Why might that be of interest to you? How might that topic play out in the real world? I've put on the slide here, spend up to 15 minutes. Now that might not sound like very long, but you've got to keep it realistic. If you want to spend hours preparing, and you can spend hours preparing, then go for it. The likelihood of that being sustainable without it being completely exhausting and stressful is probably quite low. Anything you'd like to say there, Deborah, about the before part?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had students or worked with students who didn't do this before, and the lectures were very difficult to kind of get any information from. But just spending even 15 minutes, like you've said, just prior to the lecture, really helped. I had one student who would just get up 15 minutes earlier just to read through, you know, like you're going to discuss, Googling the type of the lecture, the topic, etc. Just what knowledge they had just helped so much more in the lecture.
Absolutely. So you have a sense of what you're walking into. What you're doing really is you're framing it in some way. So when you walk in, you've got a frame, and you can start to take the bits and pieces of the topic and put them into that frame. So I have some students who just use 5 minutes because it's all they can spare, but they tell me they feel it was still worth it. So those bullet points are fairly self-explanatory. Very briefly, if you have the handouts, we recommend look at the headings, subheadings, and or the visuals and slides. Don't read every word. You don't have to teach it to yourself beforehand. You're just familiarizing yourself with it. Write down any key questions, ideas as you overview the handouts or slides. You might not have the handouts or slides beforehand. You can do other things. You can Google the topic, title of the lecture. No, it won't be exactly what you're going to walk into, but you'll get a ballpark idea of keywords. You might want to map that down. Definitions, key definitions. You might want to take a look at those and jot those down for yourself. Key formula. You could bullet point or map out what you know about that topic at the moment, or what you think about it even. Anything that gets your focus is going to help. I have students who can't do it on the morning. They just find their whole attention is focused on getting up, getting ready, getting out the door, getting to the lecture on time. So they put on their schedule small slots, maybe the day before, the evening before, where they will think about the lectures for the next day. And again, I stress, if you can't do 15, do 10. If you can't do 10, do 5. It's still worth it. So I've sort of alluded to practical preparation. Get ready. For some of you, you might think, oh, I don't need this slide. Of course, I'll get ready. Good. You can sit back and stop listening for this slide. However, if you are somebody who finds it a bit difficult to get everything ready in a short space of time and be out the door and be on time, you might want to, for example, pack the night before. You might want to make sure that your equipment is charged. You might want to make yourself a checklist of what it is you need to take with you, and then pack the night before, or maybe that will help you to pack on the morning itself. One word about the recording agreement. You need to sign a recording agreement. The DRC should disseminate that information to you about how to do that. I believe you can sign it online. Deborah, do you know any more about that?
I think you can sign it online, yes, definitely. Yeah. And if not, just ask your disability advisor. But it's last time I saw it, it's still online.
Great. Okay. So during the lecture, lecture halls are busy places. Hopefully you will be all at lectures in person this coming term, this coming year. But if you can, even though they're busy and you will be wanting to say hello to people and getting yourself settled, if you can take just a couple of minutes to think again about what's coming, about the lecture title. If you did do any mapping, and we do recommend any pre-thinking, you create some sort of visual for yourself that you can look at. Just take a quick look at it. It's a focus and engagement exercise, really. It's good practice to get into the habits of record the date and title of the lecture. And if you're going to use a recording device, and many students do, start the recording, whether it's audio note taker, digital recorder, however you're doing it. So during the lecture, the main thing I want to get across on this slide is be selective. Listen as much as you can to help you process the story, and only write down or draw down or map out the key words or formula or fragments that you feel are enough information to help you look back at the notes later on and make sense of them, to track your progress through the lecture. Don't try and write down every word, please. I do have students who do that. It works for very few. And often, if you're busy writing every word down, many students say to me, I wasn't really listening, not really deep listening to the meaning. I was hearing the words and writing them down, but I wasn't engaging. Some people also write down the time codes of a recording, or they create bookmarks on a digital recorder to help them track their way through the lecture. Why might you create a bookmark? Something was particularly interesting and you think you might listen to it again later, or something was particularly challenging and you feel you didn't really understand it and you think, I know I want to listen to that later. That's a good point to maybe create a bookmark or write down a time code. Deborah, anything else you'd like to say about the during?
I kind of think, again, it's, and I'm sure you will touch on it, but it's that focus as well. And I kind of think, like you've said before, if you've had chance to look previously at what the lecture is about, or even just like you said, 5 minutes, it helps with focus during the lectures, that you're able to pick up on key things that you can remember as well. So again, I think just going back to what you've said, if you can get a little bit of information, know what you walk into, so you've got a framework, I think that's also key during the lecture as well, with focus and concentration.
Yeah. So in terms of what your notes look like, how, during the lecture, it's a very personal thing. If you're using a piece of software like Audio Note Taker and you've imported the slides, you will have already a set framework in terms of the boxes and where you input your own keywords, bullet points. Some people use note templates, and you can use templates on a screen. You can set it up on a screen or by hand. I mean, I certainly have students who do take notes by hand. They record the lecture, but they still do maps or bullet points by hand. Do you, Deborah?
Yeah, I've still got quite a few students use templates.
Yeah.
And take notes by hand.
Yeah, that kinesthetic feedback that you get, that sensory feedback of a pen or highlighter or, on a piece of paper, on a notepad, really supports a lot of the students that I work with to process and stay focused in an extended listening situation. So you can use a number of templates. There's a lot available. We've got an example of the Cornell method, which Deborah's going to just briefly chat through on the next slide.
So on this one, and it's ever so strange as well, because when I first started those many years ago, this could be either paper-based, but actually I have, like we've talked about, handwriting. I've got a lot of students who use iPads and use the pens, and they still, you can download this. It's called Good Notes, and it's exactly just following this Cornell note-taking method. So again, it doesn't have to be paper-based. If you still want to use your pen on your iPad, you can use something like this. So all this is briefly, because if you go on to, say, Good Notes, they kind of show you lots of nice ways how to use it. But on paper-based, ideally, you've got the actual notes from the lecture go into the main note-taking column. So you can see it's split into three. So the white one is where you put the main notes. You've got the smaller column to the left-hand side, and that's used for questions about notes that you answer when reviewing. So any questions, any points, any keywords, it said there, maybe a few diagrams, if it helps you to understand it better. And then at the bottom, and I think this is where, I think you mentioned something ages ago when I very first started, Kitty, about summarising what you've got from that, whether it's note-taking from books or from lectures, etc. And I've got a lot of students who actually feel that just doing a brief summary gives them an idea of whether, you know, what they need to look at, what this is about when they're going back over their notes. So basically, that's what the Cornell note-taking method is about. But like you've said, there's lots and lots of different ways. It's very personal, depending on, you know, what kind of note-taking you like to do.
Absolutely. And just a quick aside, any resources, any slides we show you that are an example of a template, a copy will be included in the resources section of the transition event. So if you want to, if you're interested, you can download that. But as Deborah said, there's this and many templates are freely available online. You may already be familiar and have your own template. And that's a really important point. If you've already got something which you feel works for you, go with it. Build on it. You don't have to develop a whole new set of skills because you're coming in to this different context. If you've come straight from sixth form, you'll have some great skills already. If you've been out working for a while and you're coming back in to education, you'll have some great transferable skills from the workplace. So the study skills approach is really to explore what you already have that works for you and build on that, and then add in some new things if you need to. Okay, finally, during the lecture, these are just a few extra things on the screen or on the page. You can leave space. I mean, that's more of a page, a hard copy based tip, so that you can go back later, as Deborah and I have both said. We'll talk about that shortly when you review the lecture. Build up a bank of abbreviations or symbols. Might sound obvious, but just having 10 symbols or abbreviations that you stick with consistently, and you know that every time you see that word, those letters, that symbol in the notes, it means X. That can be helpful. Visual markers, horizontal lines to show relationship, end of a section. I mean, highlighting, that's an obvious one. Okay, after, reflect and consolidate. So the key thing, the key message really about the after is to revisit notes as soon as you can afterwards, because it's going to be fresher in your memory. You're going to connect back to it more quickly, and that whole thing is going to take a bit less time. As far as most of my students are concerned, many can't do it straight after the lecture. Sometimes they have another lecture that follows hot on the heels of the one they've just been in, or they have a supervision, or they just can't do it immediately, but they do it as soon as they can. So what reflective prompts you can use? I think it will depend a lot on the sort of thinker that you are, and actually even more probably the subject that you're doing. Reflective prompts in the sciences and engineering and social sciences might be different to reflective prompts in the humanities. But some examples there are, you could ask yourself after a lecture, well, what's the big picture? What are the headlines of that? If I had to tell a friend in 2 minutes what that lecture was about, what would I say? What's the key concept, theory, formula? How's it applied, used? How's it exemplified? Which particular examples really drive that home to me clearly? There'll be lots of examples throughout a lecture. You're not trying to pick them all out. You're trying to think about 2 or 3 that are most meaningful to you. And then what questions do I still have? Writing down your questions is a really good way to trigger the memory of what was going on in a lecture. You can write down questions during a lecture, actually. I forgot to say that. I do have students who really just write keywords, but they write a question as soon as it occurs to them. And when they look at their questions afterwards, that is their memory trigger back into what was going on in the lecture. Now, thinking and reflecting is one thing, but creating something that you can look at that represents that thinking, I think is key. Now, again, approach this as a manageable task. You won't have hours to spend reflecting and consolidating on every single lecture. It's unsustainable. And actually, at this point, it's not necessary, because probably it's the supervision work itself. If you're a scientist or an engineer, it's going to be the questions that really let you test out if you've understood it all. And for essay-based topics, papers, subjects, it's going to be the further reading and the writing of an essay. So this consolidation, what might it look like? So I said there, depends on your learning preferences and the subject. Some people do it as a mind map. Some people do it as a table or a summary template, and I'll show you one of those shortly. Some people bullet point the topic. They challenge themselves. Can I bullet point it in 7? And can I then talk the lecture back to myself just by using those 7 points? I do have students who like to write longhand. It's an absolute myth that every student who sits within the specific learning difficulties family hates to write. So some students like to write a summary out using headings and subheadings. In terms of a template, this is one example that I share with a lot of my students because it exemplifies really what we've talked about. There's a preparation box, main concepts, theories, arguments. Again, if you're in that sort of discipline where they're dealing with arguments, there's a box for examples. I have to put my glasses on. There's conclusion. Well, is that your conclusion? Is that the overall summary of the essay? Students often take this and adapt it, and they change the little headings in the boxes, or they make their own. Questions you still have after summarizing, and then maybe some further reading if appropriate. Deborah, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think the only thing which some students had started to do, especially when they were actual in physical lectures, was just colour coding when they were in their lectures. So they might just pop a little dot or, you know, something on there. So using the traffic light system just for how did they find that lecture? Did they understand it? Did they need more work on it? Is it something that they feel that they can come back to quite happily on? You know, just something. So when they, because like I've, you know, obviously students, we would love to say, go back of your notes all the time, make sure you go through your notes. But sometimes, like you've said, you have lectures after lectures and it's not possible. So you might end up with quite a few lecture notes, you know, at the end of the day. But if you started to colour code them and you think, oh, green, you kind of managed to do the pre-reading for that lecture, you felt happy with it, you know, that's going to be easier to tackle than maybe, say, a red one where you had no idea or you lost focus. So maybe just that's another strategy as well, of just not necessarily, you know, where we spoke about consolidating what you've taken from the lecture, but that's just kind of something easy that you can, at the end of it, think, how did I feel that lecture went? And just kind of grade it, you know, some kind of a colour.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic suggestion. And we will return to that point actually, as we summarise shortly. So the final really after point is think about organisation. Keeping things organised, files, folders, whether digital, hard copy or a mixture of both, can really, really help when you want to find something quickly. Deborah will talk about this in another video connected to time management and organisation, but making an appointment with yourself, a weekly appointment, putting it on your timetable to just go through your filing, again, digitally and or hard copy, and get everything organised. Saves a lot of stress at the end of term, during the holidays, during term, and it's particularly useful when it comes to revision time. Save any recordings after lectures as soon as possible so that you can find them quickly. Think about whether you're going to use ring binders and dividers, whether you're going to use digital repositories like OneNote or Google Keep. Label your notes, as Deborah was saying, you can use the colour coding traffic lighting system and use tabs and keywords, particularly digitally, so that you can find things again quickly. So in summary, get clear in your mind why you want to take notes. What purpose do you want them to serve? Because if you know why you want to take the notes, what they're going to be used for, you can devise the system and the look of the notes that really matches that goal, that meets that need. When you can, do something before. In the lecture, really try and get the story, the big picture, and just capture what you need to be able to go back and look at it and make sense of it. Even if that making sense of it, as Deborah said, is just to put an amber colour code by it, as in, I wasn't 100% confident about that lecture. I need to do a bit more work on that when I can. And organise your notes systematically and regularly. So again, to return to what Deborah was saying, be realistic. To be honest, having said all of this, no student that I work with has time to do the before and after in relation to every single lecture across the term. So you have to make choices. And sometimes the lectures or the topics to target are the ones that concern you the most for whatever reason. The ones that you know are probably going to be really challenging. Those are the ones that you will probably benefit most from doing the before and after. It can be trial and error, as that bullet point says. Give yourself time. You don't have to get it right. You don't have to get it perfect straight away. You probably won't get it perfect across the whole time. I don't mean to sound defeatist. I have third years who still say, can we just talk about note taking again? It's an ongoing process, but it is a good idea to think about it in advance and have a plan. Okay, so we're going to move on to note taking when you're reading. We're going to be talking about a lot of the same things, but now's a good point if you want to take a break, to pause or to stop and then come back. The next segment hopefully is going to be 20-25 minutes. We'll keep it as brief as we can without changing you on ideas. Okay, so moving on to taking notes from reading. So we're going to talk about taking an active approach to note taking, by which we mean get focused, get engaged, get prepared for the reading and note taking. We're going to talk about managing reading lists, and then we're going to look at different ways to present and organise your notes, some of which will be the same as the taking notes from lectures. And we're going to talk about incorporating a before and after to the specific reading and note-taking activity. Sounds familiar? Okay. So before you read anything at all, say to yourself, well, why do I need to read anything? Bit like we suggested, think, well, why would I bother to take notes? Why are you reading anything? Let's say you've had a lecture on something. Why read anything else? When you can answer that, you'll know what information you're looking for from your reading. So we suggest, again, we say 10 to 15 minutes, but you could just spend 5. Just jot down while you're reading something, anything. If you've got an essay question, that can be very useful to help frame this as an activity. So you spend up to 15 minutes analysing the question. Just look more closely at it. Analyse it on paper or on screen. Is it in parts? You've got to compare, contrast, theories, arguments, develop an argument, explain a process. What do you already know or think about the topic? If you've had the lecture, you're in a good place to write some things down about that. What don't you know? It's quite difficult to know what you don't know, but what might you need to answer the essay question? And maybe what does it link to? Other topics, theories. Again, these are ideas. You don't have to be right. It doesn't have to be perfect. A very usual presentation for this is a spider diagram, but you can use bullet points or write a paragraph. Again, you're setting up a framework in advance of your reading choices. Now, that initial thinking stage might look like that if you're using on-screen mind mapping software like MindView or Inspiration. Or you might do it by hand. It's fine. It's really to download what's in your head and clear the working memory, crucially, in preparation for the reading. So what matters is you've thought about while you're reading, what you know, what you might be looking for, and you've written ideas, questions, areas down so you don't forget them. Anything you want to add there, Deborah?
I think, no, what you've said makes total sense as well. I think it is, this seems to be quite a big area that I tend to have students coming along, is that what am I reading for? So some of the study skills sessions that we actually do just tend to focus sometimes on breaking down those, why are they doing this reading? So again, it's something they can come to us and we can have a look at different strategies and go through this with them.
Yeah. So, key message of this slide. You won't have time to read every word of a text on a reading list. That's the reality of it. And all academics know that. So you've got to be discriminating. So if you are given a huge reading list, it can be a really good idea to break that, crack that open for yourself and make something more manageable. Now, you might be given a starred directed reading list straight off, which is great. Focus on those first, and don't worry about all the others initially. See if you can get what you need from that prioritized reading. If you haven't been given that, it can be a good idea to make your own reading list in a way, to separate out something that can feel quite overwhelming. So how do you do that? By overviewing. Give yourself 45 minutes. Again, I'm trying to pick what might seem like a manageable amount of time in a busy schedule. And that 45 minutes is for you to briefly look at the different titles on the reading list and decide which ones look most helpful in relation to your reading purpose, which you've already thought about and made a few notes about. So how do you overview? You probably already know all these techniques. Look online for book or chapter summaries. Read the abstracts of articles, which look like the best match. You can also consider the language, like what's the writing style like? Read a little snippet, the vocabulary of the text. Some students say to me, well, this one seems really relevant, but it's really dense. And my fundamental understanding of the topic, I'm not ready to read something like that. I want something simpler initially. So they'll choose to start with something that they feel is more accessible, either in writing style, font size, format can really make a difference to many of the readers that I work with processing that text in a way that feels more manageable. Date of publication can be very relevant. Maybe you want something older, maybe you want something written more recently. And then practicalities, actually, what's available in the library and online. This video isn't focused directly on the reading experience. This is really about making notes from the reading. There are many more things that Deborah and I discuss with students about the actual act of reading words on the page or on the screen. And if you want to discuss that further with either of us or the other study skills tutors, then do book in to work with us and talk about that. There will be books on your reading list that look interesting as you're scoping out which ones you're going to actually focus on. But you won't have time to read them for the current supervision work. So it can be a really good idea to keep a note of those books, because you might want to come back to them for revision purposes, or if you think, oh, I'm doing a paper, another paper on that next term, or if you know that you've got to write a dissertation and you think that that falls into an area you could be interested in, it's a good idea to keep a sort of beta reading list for yourself that you can consult maybe in vacation weeks. So you're ready to read the first text, but I reiterate, you still won't have time to read every word, and you still need to consider, do you need to read every word? There will be some articles or chapters where it's quite right and proper to read every word. It's so important and it's so relevant to your reading purpose that you do start at the beginning and you read it right the way through. But the study skills strategy is to double check which ones you need to do that on and which ones you don't, where you could just parachute in and read a section. Tip, have your essay title or the supervision questions that you're going to answer on the desk in front of you. Either print them out or write them out while you're reading. You're going to notice it as part of your reading experience, and it will keep reminding you what you are looking for. So, how can you be selective when you're reading and note-taking, but stay active and engaged? Well, one way is to get familiar with the SKU 3R technique, which is survey and question, read, recall, review. And this is a very structured approach to the reading experience, which can really impact how many notes you take and the quality of those notes. So the first stage, survey and question. 5 to 10 minutes is enough. You've got to keep it manageable. And it's really to get some context, to get an overview of the structure of the text, the story it's telling. Again, you may not need the whole story, and that's what this activity is really checking. So the way to overview the text, look at the introduction, the foreword to the book, look at the opening and concluding paragraphs maybe of sections, chapters, look at contents, index pages, look for clusters of pages around key terms, and maybe start with just those pages. I mean, reading digitally, that's a gift, because you can just search for keywords or key phrases. But you can still do that in hard copy when books have indexes. You can look at diagrams and tables if it's an article or a book that has those in. They would sort of help you track the story that's being told and get a sense of whether you need to read the whole thing or just a part of it. Deborah, anything to add there?
I think just again, like you've mentioned, those key terms and things, I have some students who will kind of have, maybe if they're doing it online, the browser open where they kind of just go and Google along any key terms or definitions they're unsure of, just so they're building up their overview as well.
Yeah, great. Active, keep it very active. A lot of students and I talk about the idea of imagining you're going to talk to the author of the text. I doubt very much you'd go in and give them their book or their article and say, could you just read that to me while I take notes? You'd ask them questions. So that can be a good way to think about this part of the pre-reading activity. What would you ask them? Now you've overviewed their text, what questions have you got? You don't have to have hundreds of questions, 2 or 3 can be enough. But that gives you a very focused reading purpose. You'll see other things that are interesting and that you want to take notes on. But if you can find the answers to those questions in the reading, those will probably be very good and very useful notes. A higher engagement, higher level of focus while you're reading also impacts on processing, keeps notes relevant, and really helps you see the reading experience as more of a dialogue. And that can help you read more critically, actually, and keep your notes more critical. So then you're into the reading. And again, we're not going to go into too much detail here because this is about notes, not reading. But a couple of key things I would like to say is make sure you chunk the reading. Try not to read too much in one go before you stop and just reconsider what you've read. So a chunk might be a paragraph if it's a very densely written text, or it's something that has a lot of new information that you haven't encountered before. It might be a page, a section, a few pages. As you read, you can highlight things, underline things, maybe write a couple of thought words in margins or on your page, just to leave a little track so that when you stop and you think, okay, what have I just read? Am I following it? You've got a few clues. You've left a few footprints in the snow so you can find your way back. Now, obviously, marking up a hard copy, if it's a library book, you can do this on Post-its. If it's your own copy, you can mark up text as much as you are happy to mark it. But if you're working on screen on a PDF, you can also do quite a lot of annotations. So I'm going to show you a slide now that's got some examples of these, and Deborah's going to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, now I think there's absolutely loads of apps out for these. Again, one of them we spoke about earlier was GoodNotes. So basically you can annotate on PDFs, PowerPoints, lecture slides, as well as on your, you know, on papers and things. So as this is being shown on the screen. So it's actually looking, and again, there is a lot of apps out there, so it will be personal preference. And I also think a lot of the students I'm speaking to at the moment, because lectures and A-levels and everything have been online, are already aware a lot about online apps. So it might be that GoodNotes is quite an old app now, and there's more out there. But again, it's something we can discuss in study skill sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, my students are always updating my knowledge of what's out there. So recall, we've had survey question. You've thought about it before, you've had a quick look at the text. You've thought, well, what questions would I ask the authors of this text if I could? You've done a bit of reading. You've decided I'm going to read this chunk. You haven't finished your reading, but you're going to stop and just recall. You're going to think about what you've just read. So you stop after a chunk, you look at what you've highlighted, annotated, and just recall it for yourself. Am I following the story? How relevant does this seem? Does this still seem relevant? Have I chosen a good bit to be reading right now? Or can I not really see how this is linking to my essay title or my questions? Should I keep reading this actually, or should I just sort of put a bookmark in it and try something else? Or maybe another couple of paragraphs will make it clear. At that point, you might want to start putting some actual notes down onto the page, digital or hard copy that you're using. Might be a quote. You might want to put down your thoughts about a point the author's making and just put a page reference. You might have a question that you want to write down. This recall moment is the point at which to put some more detailed notes onto your page if you want to. Some students like to write their own ideas and thoughts in a different colour to any quotes because it stands out immediately to them. And if they need to develop an argument for an essay, the seeds of the argument, the growth of the argument will be in the way that your thinking is developing as a critical response to what you're reading. And this read recall happens on an iterative basis as you read a chunk, pause, recall, make some notes, read another chunk, pause, recall, etc. So the review stage, before you finish reading and go and do something else, before you close the laptop or the book, stop and think. What was that about? Step back, think about the big picture. Overall, what's come out of this reading? Has it changed your mind? Surprised you? How relevant was it? What was most relevant to your reading purpose from the notes that you've taken? Some people will just highlight those. Some people will bullet point them separately. What are the 3 most important things relating to your reading purposes that have emerged? Has it raised any questions that you might like to ask the next text, for example, about the topic? We say 5 to 10 minutes. It's not long, and we say that, I certainly say that on purpose, because it's big picture. It's not a detailed academic summary of the book. It's from more of a personal perspective, you, the thinker, in relation to your reading purpose. And write it down. You might mind map it, or you might use a template, and I'll show you one shortly that you could use. Because that brings us on to, well, okay, I might use the SKU 3R techniques or some of them, but, you know, so what should my notes look like? Well, just to pick up on something Deborah just said and something I said earlier, the way you take notes and the way those notes look will really depend on your own learning preferences, your learning styles. We all have different styles that we respond to more strongly. Some people are very visual learners, some people are very text-based learners. To be fair, most people are a mixture of the two. And the great thing is that you have the autonomy to make your notes in the way you want to make them. So aim to develop your system and use it consistently. We're back to those keywords, because this will really help your time and frustration management levels. So they should be navigable, well organized, clearly signposted back to each text. Make sure you've got the bibliographic information, always put page numbers beside any notes, quotes, etc. Label and tag so you can find them quickly. And some people use referencing software like Zotero or Mendeley to manage references. Some first years don't bother with any of that. They maybe pick those sorts of things up later in second and third year. And some people never use them. There will be training available on those via the university training site, and librarians are the people to go to with referencing questions. So notes don't necessarily take one format. They can be a mixture of things. Mind maps, notebooks, templates, dictating thoughts and ideas, particularly for the review, the personal summary on an MP3, or using Word, speech to text. Some people are using audio note taker and they incorporate their notes from their readings into the lecture slides and the handout text, so it's all together. Or they're using an organizing app or platform like Evernote, Scrivener, Google Keep, Notion. As Deborah said, there are new ones emerging every day. So here's an example of a template, a note-taking template, and it sort of summarizes what we've been talking about. So the bibliographic information box is there to remind you to do that. The little box underneath that is that macro level survey and question. It's where you can write down initial thoughts or questions to keep your reading focused, to frame the reading experience. Then you go into the more micro level of the notes, and you can see you've got a box for the quotes, you've got a box for the link to the particular essay title or theme perhaps, and then you've also got that box for writing your own responses or thoughts about a quote or an idea. You won't want to write your own response to every single note that you write. That wouldn't be time efficient. And if you're a scientist, engineer, that box at this point may not be relevant at all. That might be only useful later when you're doing more project-based work or an essay-based module. Although, of course, plenty of scientists do still have essay-based modules. The final box is where you pull out that macro level review. The reason one of those rows is highlighted in yellow there is because some students will just go back and highlight the key rows that they think stand out to them as the most useful notes from that particular reading. Deborah, anything you want to say at this point?
No, I think you've covered it really well. No, definitely. And again, like everything else we've said, different strategies suit different students. So it is about long and having those study skills sessions with us, definitely.
So, I mean, that's one example, that template, but your notes might look like this. Just a much simpler presentation, if you like. And again, that can be drawn up in a notebook. Or they might look like that. Some students keep them at annotation level and then just write a very brief summary separately. Some students are sticking to purely handwritten notes. It helps them process, it helps them remember. They keep it well organized. Doesn't matter whether it looks organized to anyone else, as long as it's your system and you can navigate it, it's fit for purpose. Some students love to make notes on a whiteboard. I mean, then they take a picture of the whiteboard, save that, and then they can get rid of what they've got on there and start again. So as Deborah said, that really is showing that it's very different for every student and is also very linked to what your subject is actually. So in summary, stay active with your reading, and that will impact on your note-taking, and it will really help keep your note-taking manageable. Because if you take less notes, you've got less to manage when it comes to planning an essay. Everybody has some extra. That's normal. It's impossible, I think, to only take the notes that you will use and take forward into a plan to answer questions or write an essay. But you want to try and minimize too much redundancy of notes, because that can feel very overwhelming. Include your ideas and thoughts somewhere in your notes. If it's not as you go along, write down your ideas and thoughts at the end. It's something a lot of people forget to do. You're having ideas all the time, but sometimes students don't write them. And even if you don't need to have an argument or a personal response, a critical response to a piece of information, actually it can help if you do. It can make it more memorable because you develop more of a relationship to it. So it means more than just being an applied formula, a critical theory, a conceptual framework. And experiment with different ways of setting your notes out. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than it needs to be. I know we've thrown a lot of things at this screen in this video, but it could be very, very simple as long as it's supporting your memory and your understanding. So there's just a few book titles there. There are a lot of very good books out there that give advice. These are some of the books that I recommend to students, but the Palgrave series actually are very good, and there's a lot of them. They're well set out, they're simple to follow, and the advice is good. So if you're interested, take a look at those. Final thoughts. Get your supervision work done to the best of your ability within the time you have. Your supervision work isn't an exam, okay? It's an opportunity for the supervisors to see where you are with it, how you've understood a topic, and that then in turn allows them to give you more. Done is better than perfect. I'm going to leave that there, that's self-explanatory. And Deborah will pick up with this in the video that she's leading, but do try to schedule some social time a few times a week, rather than just hoping social time happens. Actually plan it in. Hobbies, exercise, whatever helps, and stick to it if you can, because taking breaks from, you know, the intensity of the work experience, it's really good for you, and it can help you keep perspective, it can help you keep your stress levels down, and that will all feed back into feeling good about yourself and feeling good about the work. And you know, we both wish you a really, really successful and happy time with us here at Cambridge. Deborah, any last words from you?
No, I kind of think just, you know, exactly what you've said. It's making sure you get that work balance right. It's got to be some relaxation in there as well, and not just completely all work. And I think you can manage that if you kind of, like you've gone through, you prioritize things, you look for certain strategies, And again, it's making sure that you've got that balance. It's that work-life balance. No, I'm all done, and we can continue looking at the work-life balance again in another presentation that we're going to do.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Deborah. And I hope to see some of you very soon.